Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you to everyone who watched the previous episode on Red Dead Redemption 2. In today's episode, I'll be looking at the photo mode in Death Stranding. I'll be breaking down the game's photo mode functions. Following this, I'll focus on this episode's special topic using filters, where I'll explain what filters are, what they do, and how you can use them to create interesting effects in your images. Finally, I'll conclude the episode with some questions I've received from the virtual photography community. Okay, Death Stranding, well, it's a pretty good mode. I mean, they didn't have it on launch, but they added it because I thought it was something they definitely needed in the game because it can be a bit of a laborious task delivering packages. So having a photo mode gave people an opportunity to do something else. It's very professionally done, very well done. So I'm just going to break down the basic functions first, then I'm going to go through each menu and just say what everything does, and then I'll sum it up. Okay, basic functions. To enter the photo mode, you need to press the touchpad, the left side of the touchpad, and that will just go straight into the photo mode. If you want to crane the image, press L2 and R2. That will crane up and crane down. Think of it like lifting a camera up and pushing it down. The height of the shot will dictate the atmosphere. You know, if you shoot from the ground level up, everything will seem bigger and more vast and kind of epic. If you shoot top down, it kind of is more panoramic landscape type photography. Now this game features a grid. Now if you click R3, the grid will appear. Now the grid, it splits the image into 9 equally spaced sort of blocks. Now I use the grid as thirds. Like for me, I use the rule of thirds. I tend to sort of frame people on one side or the other. I generally look to get the eye line right in the kind of crosshair of like where the kind of the grid is. It's just a good guide for spacing. If you use the left and right joysticks, you can move and rotate the camera. If you want to take your shot, you can hide the menu with the square button. If you want to reset the whole image, press triangle. And if you want to move the camera around fast, click L3 while you're moving and it will speed up that process. Okay, those are the basic functions. Now the main settings are broken down into 7 distinct tabs that you can switch between with L1 and R1. The first tab is the camera tab. Now first you have angle, which is basically field of view. You use that to go close or to go wide. So if you move it right to one end, it will go super close on your character. Go the other way and it will go wide. The wider you go, the more the image will look like a fisheye lens, so it will look curved because it will be unnaturally wide. So that's something to bear in mind, but I use it just to kind of micro adjust the framing once I'm kind of roughly about where I want to be. Then you have roll, which tilts the image one way or the other. I use roll for creating sense of motion, sense of movement, sense of action, or a surreal twist to an image. It's not something you should use all the time, but you know, it's a good roll. You can tilt all the way around. Next we have show UI, which is the user interface, so you can turn that on or turn it off. You can show signs. Signs are the things that other players leave around the game to give you advice or just little notes. You don't want them in your image most of the time, so you can just turn them off. And last one on the tab, you have show Odredeck scan. The Odredeck scan is the environmental scan you use to check the terrain. Now you don't necessarily want that in your photos, so you can turn it on, turn it off as you please. Okay, the second tab is the SAM tab. So you can show SAM on and off. So if you want to do a landscape without anyone in it, you can get rid of SAM altogether or put him back in, whatever you please. Then we have Sam's pose. Now there's some really funny, cool ones here. There's a lot. There's huge amounts of poses. So you've got so much variety here to play around with. Some of them are good for just like atmospheric combat, some are good for walking around, some are just good for like comedy value, so have a good look through them and they're really fun things to use. Then we have Sam's expression. Now some of them don't change that greatly, but there's a few in there that are really quite cool. So again, you've got really good options there for changing the expression depending on the situation. Then we have Sam's eye line, so you can literally change where Sam is looking. So that's kind of creepy, just moving the eye around on its own. It's like having a ventriloquist dummy or something, but that's another nice micro detail feature. Then we have turn Sam's face toward the camera. So if you want to change where Sam's looking, if you want to do a 2 camera shot, you can do that. You can also turn Sam's body toward the camera, so that's another option. So really, I like the way this game gives you options for altering Sam's physical appearance, but also his positioning. Then you have tilt weight, so you can alter how much the tilt is either way. Then you have detailed tilt weight settings, again altering the tilt. And then the last two are face and body tilt. One is horizontal, one is vertical. So obviously they changed the two different elements, horizontal and vertical. So you've got really nice options there for altering Sam, a lot more than most other games. The third tab is the BB tab. So you've got BB's pose, so you can set BB to look in whatever way you would choose. So there's again plenty of variety. Then you've got the expression, and they're probably the same as Sam's one. There's a lot there to choose from. Again, you've got the eye line, which is kind of weird, moving BB's eye around like it's a ventriloquist dummy. And then lastly, you've got the BB light, which is good if you just want to like brighten up the unit that the BB is sitting in. Okay, fourth tab is depth of field. First one is change depth of field. Now depth of field is the depth of the focus. So the first tab is to change depth of field. So you've got some nice range you've got there. The next one you have autofocus. So if you don't want to worry about actually adjusting the focus manually, you can do that. Next one down you do have that. So you can move the focus forward and back depending on where exactly you want the beginning of the focus origin. And the aperture dictates how spread out that focus is. So think of the focus is like a line, is like a thin line. If you have the aperture at 1.4, it'll be a thin line. If you have aperture at 22, it will be a line that's the entire depth of the image. So everything would be in focus. So apertures measured in f-stops. f1.4 is the lowest here. f22 is the highest. The higher you go, the more is in focus. The lower you go, the less. Okay, fifth tab is brightness and filters. First we have exposure, so that's good for elevating the brightness or the kind of making it more moody depending on the exposure levels in the image. So you've got quite a broad amount of alteration you can do there. Then you've got contrast. Contrast is something that you've got to be careful when you use it, especially if you're using color, because the higher you go, things can get a bit weird. You go low on contrast, things will get cloudy. It basically is the definition between different objects, contrast between colors and shadows. Color filters, now there's lots of nice filters here, really good job by the developers. The filters really make these kind of photo modes because they give you so much variety in terms of changing the atmosphere. So you've got lots of types, and the strength of the filter starts at 50, so you can bump it up to 100, take it down a bit. Find the filter you want and find the one that's going to suit what you're doing. That's the real trick of it. You don't have to use a filter, but sometimes a filter will just make it look good. Maybe look through all the filters first and see if any of them jump out at you. Lastly, we have noise. That creates like a grainy effect on the image. Now, a lot of people don't use it because they like super smooth type images, but noise adds a nice bit of texture, a nice bit of character and atmosphere to an image. So don't be afraid of using it. It's very nice when you get it right. Okay, sixth tab is lens effects. Firstly, we have a vignette. A vignette is like a dark border around the image that progressively gets lighter. So the idea is it will focus your attention on the center of the image. So you can turn the vignette on and off. Then you have vignette size, so you can dictate how large it's going to be. And then you have strength. So it's size, strength, and vignette. You just mix those three together. Really, if you want to accentuate what's in the center of the image. Lens distortion adds a kind of curvature to the image, so you can kind of do that to create surreal images or just alter things. Maybe mix that when you're dealing with the field of view one where it gets a bit fisheye lens type. You can maybe use that to alter it. Finally, you've got chromatic aberration, which distorts the focus and color bordering, akin to like a 3D effect. It's something I would use if you're using like a surreal type image and you want to create something a bit weird and unusual. Okay, the final tab is frames. So firstly you have frame, which is like the pop art things that you can frame around the image relating to the game. You can do widescreen shots, you can do like Polaroid type ones. Then you've got logos. You can add a logo, you can change the color of the logo, you can also do positioning horizontally and vertically, and you can also alter the rotation. So logos, if you've created an image that you feel is like a poster, like a game cover, a movie cover, and you want to put the actual logo on, but you don't want to bother going into Photoshop to do it, this is a good option. So play around with it. You can do kinds of fun things with it and kind of quirky things. So frames, they're kind of there for a bit of fun. Okay, so those are the photo mode functions in Death Stranding, but there is one more way you can take photos in the game. It's not great, but it's another interesting option. When Sam's in the restroom, if you go to the sink, you can use the analog stick to make Sam do certain animations, and when he does them, you can press a button to take a shot. Now, it's not like anything groundbreaking, but it's just a silly sort of Polaroid type image. You might do it once or twice, but there really isn't much longevity in it, but it's just another fun photo related inclusion. So that's the photo mode. It's a really comprehensive photo mode, professionally put together, really nicely structured, clean menus, cleanly presented. It's got lots of post-production options, lots of character adjustment options. The only things I didn't like were that it gets caught on the environment a little bit too much, and the draw distance isn't as wide as I'd like. Like, you can't zoom out. You can't pull away with the left joystick really far, especially as there's beautiful landscapes. That would have seemed like a really good option to have some really epic panoramic shots, but you're kind of limited to a certain space. But those are very minor things. For me, it's definitely one of the best photo modes, one of the most professionally put together, and it's got a really nice balance between function and features. So it's definitely a game that's perfect for photo modes because it does get a bit tedious walking around all the time. So the photo mode edition is perfect for this kind of game, and it gives you something else to do. So brilliant photo mode, and it definitely helps the experience. So I'd give it 9.75 out of 10. It's definitely one of the premier elite photo modes. Okay, so that's Death Stranding's photo mode wrapped up. Now, the special topic of this episode is using filters. Okay, so most games have filters, Instagram has filters, we all know kind of what filters are, but I'm going to explain them anyway because I've got to do something in this video. So what are filters? Well, filters are basically like an overlay. It's like a layer. Like in Photoshop, if you had a photograph and then you put something on top of it, or two things on top of it, it's like a split-toned layer. Two layers. So it imprints a kind of a preset type of color alteration onto the image with various effects. This game has many filters and they're very good, and they really do give you a lot of freedom to experiment. So yeah, filters, really I look at filters like split toning. Like in Photoshop you have split toning options. A filter is like a quick and easy type of split toning. Now they don't all work, it depends on the image. Sometimes they work better than others, and it's really a kind of bespoke thing you have to choose. Like when you're on Instagram, if you're putting a photo on Instagram, you'll go through all the filters and you'll look at them and you'll be like, that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. Oh, that one's alright, that one's not bad. Oh, I like that one. That's essentially the same way you should treat it when you're doing photo modes, because it's really, you can tell just by looking at an image, adding a filter to it, if it looks better or it looks worse. So when should you use a filter? If you feel like you want to add a bit of color, add a bit of something different, a bit of an eerie effect, maybe put black and white on it, because a lot of games don't have saturation sliders. So you have to use a monochrome or a black and white filter 100%. That's how you get black and white in a lot of these games. So filters, I don't always use them, but I always try see what they're going to do. So I look through the functions, I look through the filters, and I put them over the image, and I'm like, what does this one do? What does this one do? And with most games, you'll probably get 2 or 3 that you really kind of like more, that suit the type of the game. So yeah, you don't have to use filters all the time, but they do give you something different that you don't have otherwise. I mean, it's different with a game like A Days Gone, which has got really advanced color grading options. You can almost create your own filters in that game. But most other games don't have that level of complexity in terms of color grading and color management. So in those games, like in Death Stranding, you have to use filters. General tips for filters, yeah, there isn't like one filter that works for everything. So you just have to frame the picture, do all of your stuff with the photo that you're going to do with it, then go to your filters and flick all the way through them. Now, none of them might add anything. That's fine, you don't have to use one. But there might be one and you're like, oh, I like that, but it's a bit strong. So then you'll slide down the intensity of the filter just a little bit until you get, there's a kind of a point where it clicks. Visually, you look at it and it's like, something has got better there. So that's the tips for filters. Just Try them out. Whenever you take a picture, go through all the filters on the image and just think, oh, okay, I like that. The blue's good, or the black and white's good, or this like retro, or this kind of sepia. Experiment with them, because that's the only way you're really going to understand what a filter does and how it affects. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're taking a photo and you'll be like, I know exactly what filter I'm going to use here, because it's repetition and practice. But filters are really, really useful tools. Every photo mode should have filters, because it's just a fast track way of adding a nice color, graded, overlay, split toned effect. Okay, so finally we have questions and answers. So I've got 3 questions this episode. Thank you for the questions. Okay, question 1. Sometimes I run out of ideas when using photo modes. What can I do to help that? Okay, so it's not a problem to run out of ideas, because everybody runs out of ideas. What that means is your brain's telling you, I'm done, I need a break. You know, like I'm a professional photographer, so when I do a photo shoot, I'm kind of working on a 2-hour max. You know, you have about a half an hour warm up, then you have about an hour where you're capturing the kind of maximum optimized images, because you're kind of like full on, full sprint, full steam ahead. And then the final half an hour, it's kind of wind down, you're kind of slowing down and running out of juice. It's like the engine's running low and you need to replenish or just have a break. So if you're doing photo modes and you're just kind of struggling, have a break from it. Don't force it. Do it when you feel like you want to do it, because that's when you're going to do the best work. And everyone can burn out, everyone can try too hard. I often find, if I'm going out to look for photos, I don't find them. Just go out and explore, and you know, things will be there when they're there. So when you're in a game, if a moment hits you, it hits you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not the end of the world. Just have breaks. Do it when you feel inspired. Do it when something jumps out at you, because otherwise you're going to start to annoy yourself and start to hate the process. Question 2. I want to get a cool shot of the BTs in Death Stranding. Any tips on how to do this? Well, this is challenging because the BTs aren't something you can control. So you've got to kind of, firstly you've got to go and provoke them. Then you've got to kind of run around and try and place yourself in the position you want at the moment that the BTs are kind of most prevalent. Now this is pretty difficult. It takes time and you're going to have to do a lot of efforts that aren't going to work. So it can be a bit laborious and a bit tedious, but if you get the right composition and the right framing, you can do some really cool stuff, because they're very sort of eerie. These like kind of black figures coming out of this ooze in the floor. But it's all about timing and practice, and you know, you're not going to get it first time. So just try things out, try different positions, try and like when you're running around the environment away from them, think about when you're going to stop it. Think about what's in the background of your character. So it's kind of timing, and you've got to do it all very quick. So it's difficult, but just keep going at it and you will get one eventually. Okay, final question. Is it better to edit game photos in-game or in Photoshop or in an app? Well, it depends on the game. If you're doing something like Days Gone, you can probably do the entire process in the game because it's so comprehensive. If you're doing it in something like, I don't know, any random game that has a pretty minimal photo mode, you're probably better off Photoshop or an app. So, you know, in those instances, I would just frame the photo, take it, and then export that to a Photoshop setting or an app, and then do the processing there. You can also do both, but obviously the more you process something first time around limits what you can do next time. So if you just take a raw shot of the image without any processing in the game, then you've got a clean palette to work from. So it depends on the game, depends on how in-depth the photo mode is. If it's Days Gone, then I generally didn't post-produce anything afterwards. The only time I would do that is if I was doing a black and white shot and I didn't feel the game had appropriate light and dark adjustment options, then I would go into Photoshop Raw and do some tweaking there. Okay, thank you for sending me those questions. If you would like to send me some more for the next episode, I'm happy to answer any of your queries. I'll try and do my best to demystify all of the nonsense surrounding photography, virtual photography, etc. I hope that was useful. So we've covered the photo mode, we've done, what do we do? Filters, question and answers. Yeah, I'm happy when people are telling me these are helping them. I want to make photo modes more fun, and I want to make people feel less intimidated by the functions, because they're not always worded very well and they're not really user friendly to a lot of people that are laymen. And the more people who can understand how photo modes work, the more people will do it and the bigger it will grow. So I really hope these videos are helping people and I'm enjoying doing them. Let me know in the comments if you found this useful and let me know any other games you'd like covered and I'll do what I can do. But in the meantime, thank you for watching again and I hope everyone has a great day. This is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you.